Well, good evening, Dr. Birt. How are you?
Man, I'm blessed. How you, Dr. Crusoe?
I'm doing well, man. How's the weather in my home state of Ohio?
Yeah, Doc. I'm in Ohio. I'm not a Buckeye fan. I always will be a Floridian, Doc. And
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
always be a Gator.
Well, you can take the guy out of Florida, but you can't take Florida out of the guy, huh? Okay.
Hey, man, look, I've been this year 25 years, and I still not used to this weather. There's snow sitting outside and
Yeah.
11 degrees when I got up this morning. So.
Well,
But
I remember those days, man. I left Ohio in '78. We had the blizzard,
uh-huh.
the early part of '78, and then I left the end of '78 and went to California, and I hadn't been the same since when it comes to the weather and all
You
that.
never did come back, huh?
I never did, man. My wife cannot believe that I grew up in cold weather like Ohio, because I.
Well, my wife is a Mississippi girl. I'm a Floridian, and
Yeah.
the first week I came here, and from New Orleans, from Louisa Street, there were about 5 or 6 people from the Louisa Street that came with me,
Okay.
and that was the first week, and they were scheduled to stay a week, and they left to leave that Saturday. We came in on a Saturday, and it didn't have a blizzard, man, but we were snowed in for about 5 days. They couldn't leave.
Oh man.
That was my first experience, Doc. And I
Well,
said,
that was.
Lord, what have I done?
Well, it's something you'll never forget. But well, welcome to this podcast, which is called Preachers Conversations. And
Okay.
the first question is, who is Dr. Robert Birt? Tell us something about yourself. And now, members of Churches of Christ know you. Those in the Ohio State, Midwest know you. Our brotherhood knows you. But for the sake of those who may be outside of Churches of Christ, who is Dr. Robert Birt?
Well, again, Dr. Crusoe, I won't elongate the story. I try to simplify it. But like I said earlier, I'm from Jacksonville, Florida, Mixon Town boy. I And I became a member of the Church of Christ in 1980 through a number of different circumstances, that I'll never forget because it's part of my testimony. I was driving down a popular street called Main Street with a friend of mine, and and I had another close friend that was a member of the Church of Christ. We used to call him President Michael Smith, and but I was with a friend of mine, Gary, and got pulled over by the police. And I saw him following me for about 8 blocks, accused me of speeding, but I had enough sense not to act out of character with him. And I got gave me a ticket, and I took the ticket once he pulled up and balled it up and threw it out the window. That almost came back to hunt me. And so we went out and got home that on Sunday morning, and my daddy used to go fishing every Sunday, but he never would drive my mother's car, and I had driven my mother's car, and he went fishing my mother's car. And my friend called me and said, "Look, man, I forgot to tell you, I left a dime bag in your mama's car. A dime bag." See, I didn't smoke. I do no smoking, but when he told me he left a dime bag,
Yeah.
I said, my dad had always said to me, my dad was like 5'3", man. He had a Napoleon complex, And he was rough, man. And he told me, "I'll catch you with that stuff, I'm gonna kill you." So
Okay.
can't imagine he was fishing for the first time in my mother's car. And I said, "I don't know where I'm gonna live."
Yeah.
So when he pulled up, he hadn't found. I went and got it and destroyed it. But Michael had invited me to come to church that Sunday night at the Westside congregation.
Yeah.
Brother Charlie McClendon, and I'm sure you're aware of him, was doing a evangelism workshop. That's his thing, And I said, "Man, I'm going to church tonight." Now, I'd always gone to church, man. I was in the Church of the Lord Jesus Christ of the Apostolic Faith. I played a lead guitar. We used to sing. We had a group, and we were traveling and singing. But I said, "I'm going to church." And so I went to church that night, and I was baptized into Christ that very night. And And so I started going to church sporadically. You know what I'm saying? I was going. Zebedee Moore at that time was the preacher, man. That guy could preach, man. And that was in March of 1980. And Brother Moore came to me one day, and because I was at some point I really started getting involved. It took a while. You know, it took a while. Brother Stewart and the elders and some other brothers, man, they were just hounding me. I mean, hounding me, you know, and sometimes I go to church, sometimes I wouldn't, and they'd come knock on the door. I was living with my parents, you know, they were hounding me, boy.
Yeah.
I said, man, I'm going to church, stop these Negroes from hounding me, you know. So I went, and so it by the end of April, Brother Moore came to me and said, man, there's something about you, man, that I like. He said, I need you to go to Southwestern Christian College. Now, you remember, I'm a new convert, Mike. I'm a new convert. He said, I want you to go out to Southwestern Christian College. And for whatever reason, man, I didn't argue with him. My mother didn't like it, but I had never heard of Southwestern Christian College. I never heard of Jack Evans. I never heard of anybody. Never heard of Terrell, Texas. I didn't know there was a Terrell, Texas, you know.
Yeah.
But I went out there after being in the church 3 months.
Oh, okay.
And I was a new convert at Southwestern Christian College in 1980, and that place was amazing to me. Not the conditions, living conditions, you know, but just the people, man. I had never seen so much youthful talent. There was talent all over the place, man. And I was just having a ball. And God blessed me to acclimate to a group of young preachers that I built relationships with, and I stayed. I was a part of the first 4-year graduating class there at Southwestern, and so. But when I tell you, Michael, it blessed my life. I met my wife there. You know, I met my wife there. We weren't dating that. Yeah, but I said at some point I'm going after this girl. So I went to Mississippi. And so, you know, I met my wife there. Wonderful, wonderful person. Yeah. And so I ended up a little town in Alabama, Enterprise, and I got keratoconus. I got an eye disease.
Yeah.
And I only see out of one eye. Because I got hit with a ball in one, but I had to have corneal transplant. So, you know, and so I got an eye disease. But it has never hindered me from doing what I need to do, because I had to go back to Jacksonville to get some insurance, because I didn't have insurance at the church, and got the transplants. And I ended up in New Orleans for about 9 years, and now I'm in Toledo at the Glass City Church, and this year's 25 years. So I count my blessings.
Yeah.
And I don't have anything to brag about. Brother Crusoe, Dr. Crusoe, I have everything to be grateful about.
Yeah. Well, man, just what you said is so interesting. And you mentioned Enterprise, Alabama.
Yeah.
Is that where your wife is from, or is that where you started preaching?
That's where I started preaching. Yeah. The Adam Street Church of Christ.
Man, what's so interesting about Enterprise? When I came out of high school in 1974, I played basketball. I was a 10-point guy, so I wasn't the best of the starters, but you know, you could count on 10 points.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I had an invitation to go to Enterprise State Junior College.
Oh, really?
Yeah, man, and it just slipped through my fingers. But anytime I hear about Enterprise, that always comes back to me and everything. So
you got a little bow weave in the middle of the little downtown, but we spent 2.5 years there, and it was beautiful.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, that's where my daughter was born. Now she claims New Orleans. She won't claim Enterprise, but
all right.
That's where she was born. That's on her birth certificate, you know.
Okay. So you're married, have children. Are you a grandparent yet?
Yes, man. I got 2 boys. I got one 15 and one 11, and then a granddaughter in the middle is 13. But they were all born here. But they moved back to Oxford, where my wife is from, because they got a lot of family there, and they want to be around family. So they moved to Oxford, and they're doing well. I love my grandkids, man, and you know, they get more out of me than my daughter ever did.
Well, ain't that something? Yeah. well, listen. Let's talk about Southwestern. Your days at Southwestern, and especially your call to ministry. And we don't normally use that term in Churches of Christ, but I think you and I we might be in the minority who do believe that people are called to the ministry. And your situation, you say you went to Southwestern as a new convert.
Yes.
But you was in their 4-year Bible program. So what was how did you end up becoming a preacher?
Well, Mike, I wasn't saved, but I love the Lord. I've always loved the Lord, and like I said, we used to sing, playing guitars, man. We would sing, but I've always had this thing about God. I wasn't doing right, I wasn't living right, I wasn't saved, but I always had this thing about God, and I think that once I became a member of the Church of Christ, I think that's what Brother Morris saw in me. That I love the Lord. I grew up in the hood, but I wasn't radical. I grew up in the hood. I didn't do a lot of things my friends would do. I would separate myself, and so where maybe 70% of the people that I grew up with got records and all that. I didn't do all that. It just wasn't something that I did. I didn't practice all that kind of stuff. So, but I was around it, I was around it, and I just didn't do it. And so when I became a member of the church, and I went out of the Southwest, and there was something inside of me that said to my spirit that this is where I belong. I belong here. I belong in this environment, and of course, all of the talented people and all of the people that fed into me. I just knew that God wanted to use me. As a proclaimer, I just knew that, and I loved it, and I wasn't like some of you guys, I wasn't in love with learning, I got through high school,
Yeah.
I got through, but
Uh-huh.
I'm telling you, going out there, man, I fell in love with learning. I fell in love with learning the Bible because I was around people that loved it, and I just watched God just changed my worldview.
Yeah.
He changed my worldview, and because he changed my worldview, God did it, and we know that God does that through people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who pour into you.
Yeah.
And I had people to pour into me. They just poured into me. I had great examples, and these people poured into me, and I'm telling you, Mike, it changed my worldview. I saw the world so differently,
Yeah. Well, who were some of those people, if you don't mind sharing?
Well, I'm gonna give honor where honor's due first to the prayers, Dr. Jack Evans. Dr. Evans was a kind person, man. Now he was serious. Brother Evans, Dr. Evans was serious, but he was a kind person, man. He would speak to you, and like some of them kids he already knew from the youth conference and knew their parents that gone there. But he was so just to watch Dr. Evans, man. We used to go, Dr. Crusoe, and watch him debate. And man, it was just, I'm sitting there saying, man, let's look at this guy, man. So in my early years, Dr. Jack Evans, Dr. Maxwell, my first 2 years, on Sundays, I went to Lawrence Amata with the Maxwells.
Yeah.
And I worship with them, and Dr. Maxwell. And, Dr. Maxwell is such a kind person, just a low-key personality, but just so kind. And so those were my early influences. Then as I moved on, you had people like Dr. Foster, and Brother Farmer, Dr. Farmer, Mike, I can remember we were taking the book of Romans.
Okay.
And when Dr. Farmer gave you a test, he said, well, he would tell you the chapters that you had to write your paper on when you take the test. And I'll never forget, man. He gave us these chapters. So I chose Romans chapter 7. I said, man, I can do this. And when I turned the paper in and he turned it back, he gave it back to me. He wrote up on the top of the paper, "You filibustering." He told me I was filibustering, and I said, "Oh Lord," but he taught me, he taught me how to study.
Yeah.
And then in my last 2 years came Ken Green.
Yeah, Ken.
Dr. Green, man.
Yeah.
Dr. Green really challenged the thinking, taught us to think, taught us to see things, and so I'm so indebted to Dr. Green for taking me to another level of just appreciating the Bible and studying the Bible.
Yeah.
And those were the instructors that who influenced me. There were other students who were very talented, you know, and articulate,
Yeah.
and that influenced me. But man, I'm telling you, man, I thank God for my Southwestern experience. You know,
Yeah.
I really do. Yeah.
I'm glad you shared that. You know, Christian education needs to be pushed. It needs to be, you know, it needs to be encouraged. And
Yes.
and
Yes.
so I'm glad that you shared that. And you said that high school, you got through high school. Yeah, yeah, but you have your doctor's degree. Tell us about
Yes.
your journey, where you attended, because you were in my hometown, I know.
Yeah.
But tell us about that journey.
Yeah. And I was encouraged, you know, from people around me. I wanted to sharpen my skills and my understanding. So for my MDiv, I went to a little school called in Finley called Weinbrenner, and so I you know, I have bad eyes. So man, God was so good to me because I had bad eyes. I've always had bad eyes, so I don't drive at night. And so what God did, man, there were students around me that were from Toledo. I never ever had to worry about transportation getting home. Now getting down there, I had a deacon. God bless Brother James, Brother Randolph, James Randolph. He's gone on now, a deacon at our church. He would take me to school. I never had to worry about getting there, and I never had to worry about getting back home. So I got my MDiv from there. I learned a whole lot, just learning and reading and understanding, man, and I sat in the class of some legitimate scholars, you know.
Yeah.
And I was learning, and then I decided to go to Dayton United Theological Seminary.
Yeah.
And when I tell you, Dr. Crusoe, that was such a phenomenal experience at United, because in that doctorate program, it's really Afrocentric.
Yeah.
So I was able to interact and meet with a lot of dynamic preachers, man. And my mentors were Harold Carter out of Baltimore, Maryland.
Okay. Yeah.
And we used to have to go to Baltimore. And Rudolph McKissick out of my hometown in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
So those were my mentors, and we had to go to Jacksonville. We had to go to Baltimore. We had to go to other. You know, I just kind of got exposed to a lot of things and challenging, man. You know, when I committed myself to learning and education, Dr. Crusoe, that's what I did.
Yeah.
I learned how to do it, man. You know, you got a doctor's degree, so you know the painstaking challenge it is to put together papers and dissertations and all that, man.
Yes, it is work. It takes work and discipline for sure. You know, and it's paid for. You know.
Man. You know, my wife told me, I'm gonna leave you alone. You know, because you stuck in that office, man.
Yeah. You know? Well, you know, I know where United is. You know, I grew up in Dayton.
Right.
Had friends that lived in that area, but when I was in high school, I used to walk around in that area.
Oh, did you?
It just seemed so serene. It was like it's in Dayton, but it's not in Dayton because I'm on, you know, it's on the west side of town. So
okay.
when you get around that area, Salem Avenue, Cornell, and that kind of thing, it was just a little bit different. So
okay.
In high school, I didn't know why, but now I do know. You know,
okay.
Studying the Bible, instead talking about God and everything. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, man.
Yeah. Well, listen, Dr. Birt, let's go back a little bit to preaching, because do you remember your first sermon that you preached?
Man.
Do you remember what it was?
John 3:16.
What was it now?
John 3:16 is the God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. You know, and it was a mess. You
see, it was a mess. Yeah, I think all of our first sermons were a mess. Okay,
man. You remember Benny, right?
Yeah, Benny Walls.
Yeah, that's my boy. As a matter of fact, My
Yeah.
wife is his first cousin. She from Oxford.
Okay. Yeah.
His mama and my mother-in-law are sisters, and
Oh.
his daddy is my father-in-law's uncle.
Okay. Okay.
And so, man, Benny taped that sermon, man.
No, he didn't. Yeah. Okay.
And years, because being from I would go to Oxford with family. And he had all these tapes, man. And he handed me that tape one day. I said, "Oh, don't, man! I'm gonna keep this tape. I'm gonna get this tape back to you, man. I don't want anybody to hear that stuff,
I
man."
know, man. I know. Yeah.
And part of being a part of that fraternity of preachers on Southwestern campus,
Yeah. Yeah.
you had to preach.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now I went to school with some preachers, man. Jared Taylor,
Yeah.
Jeff Carruthers, Harold Rock, them guys. When I tell you, Herman Wesley, all those guys could preach, man. They had been around the church all of their lives. They was quoting the Bible from Genesis to Revelation.
Yeah.
Here I come. They told me, you got to preach.
Yeah. You got to come with it, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, but I came. I don't know if I was with it. but and I look back, man, Benny had tapes of everybody, see.
Okay.
I mean, Benny had tapes of you.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, Benny.
Yeah.
Benny had tapes of everybody. He taped everything,
Yeah.
Those cassette tapes, man. And I say, but I was encouraged. Now they could have come at me and said, "Man, what in the world were you doing?" Fellas didn't do that, man.
Yeah.
They encouraged me. They really did,
Yeah.
Well,
let me ask this: how would you describe your preaching? Expository, narrative, topical, exegetical, textual. We categorize preaching now.
Right.
How would you describe your preaching?
My primary mode of preaching is expository preaching. That's what I do primarily. But I play with a lot. Sometimes you do a topical subject. You keep it all in context. Sometimes you may preach a narrative. You may preach a narrative message. You know what I'm saying? But primarily, I'm an expositor. I study that way. I communicate that way. I talk that way because I want to expose people to what the text actually says. What the text actually says and what it means. And so that's what I want to do. But
right.
Sometimes you do topical stuff. That has a place.
Yeah.
That has a place. So I play around with all of them from time to time, but primarily, I do the expository piece. Man.
Well, tell us your sermon prep. What's involved in your sermon preparation? Now, this is before you get into the pulpit.
Yes. Yeah.
Up to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I spent some time thinking about the church itself in terms of how my preaching. I think about Glad City itself, and I think about where we are. I think about what I want. What I want the I think about what I want the people to learn. I think about what I want the people to learn, and just kind of here's where we are, and here's some things we need to learn. And so I just sort of sit around and think and meditate about that and pray about that. Then I come and I think about texts, that may fit what I want them to learn. This text and that text and that text. And so so Dr. Chris, so I read the text. I read it.
Yeah.
And I take notes on the text. I start with the text. I take notes on the text. I write down stuff and I write this down in terms of my observation of a text.
Yeah.
Right. And then I read scholars and have other information that I look at and just kind of seeing what people who are legitimate experts based on whatever text I'm in. And so I read and I write down what I read. I take notes. just trying to get a basic understanding of what I read and what I've written down. And I write down comments and whether it's cultural or linguistics, I write all that down. I put all that down, and then I began to structure. I began to structure my notes. I want to, because I've defined words and there's cultural analysis, whatever it needs to be done.
Right. Good.
I put all that together.
Yeah.
Then I come to my homiletics.
Yeah. Hey, come on.
But I always say this. What is the primary question that I want to ask in this sermon? Here's the primary. I'm looking at the text, but what is the primary question I want to ask? So I formulate my primary question just by studying the text and how it speaks to me and out of my relationship with the church, and now form this homiletic that is designed to answer that question. So I never preach a sermon without saying, here is the primary question. Here's the question that I want to answer.
Yeah.
And so everything within the body of that lesson is to answer that question biblically, theologically, and practically. Now you so that I won't preach 2 hours, you got to cut the fat off.
Yeah.
And get to what's really significant, and that's what I try my best to do. And then I draw a conclusion saying, here's the do.
Yeah.
We've answered the question, but you just can't talk. You got to walk.
Well, all right. Yeah.
You just can't hear, because people, they can hear, but there needs to be some movement.
Yeah. You got, what's one of your favorite sayings in your sermon?
I got one, Doc.
Huh?
I got one. I always end with this.
Yeah.
Never look down on a man unless you're looking down to lift him up.
Okay. All right.
That's me. That's my primary statement that I say all the time, and I say that, Michael, because God lifted me up.
Yeah.
Because if you knew me, you knew where I come from. If you understood my experiences, man, and all those kind of things, you would never have said, when you saw me, for example, as a teenager, that I'd be where I am. It's only him, dog. I'm here simply because of him.
Yeah.
I didn't earn this. I didn't deserve this. God gave it to me as a gift.
As a gift, yeah.
And I'm where I am because he it's a gift. I believe God shaped me and formed me for this. But if you looked at my past and where I've come from, you never would have seen this. And God has done a tremendous job of gifting me to be where I am. And I remind myself of that because I want to always appreciate, Mike, God's gift to me. And I don't take it for granted. I don't try to own it.
Right.
I don't try to manipulate it. And of course, don't get it twisted. I am human.
Yeah.
So being human, you're a preacher, you're human.
Yeah.
We have those moments, man.
Yeah.
Well, we have those moments where we want to roll up our sleeve.
Yeah.
Say now, look, I ain't no chump now.
Well, okay.
You know what I'm saying? I ain't no chump. It may appear to be that I am.
Yeah. But you got some Peter in you. I think we all got some Peter in us.
Yeah, so we have to recalibrate, man. We have to okay. Let me check myself.
Yeah.
And so let me know when I have to stand for something, to stand for it the right way, but I'm gonna stand for it. But I can't stand for it like I used to stand for it back in the day.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because I count it as a gift. As a gift.
Well, let me ask this. What advice would you give someone now getting started in ministry? You mentioned how Brother Moore saw something in you, recommended that you go to Southwestern. Then you mentioned men like Jack Evans, the late president of Southwestern Christian College, Dr. Maxwell, Gus Farmer, Ken Green, what advice would you give to someone now that's getting started in ministry?
And I'll start with the negative to the positive. And the first thing, don't live on an island all by yourself. Man, don't, you know, and you may be gifted, you know, and you may have some perspective and you may have some vision. You may have some vision of what you may have some vision of what this is all about. But don't live on the island by yourself. You know, you got to connect with people. You got to find you some mentors. You got to find you some mentors. You got to find some people that you trust enough that will mentor you, you know, and instruct you and teach you and support you and tell you when it's on the negative side and tell you when it's on the positive side and tell you when you're just in the middle. You know, you know, if that's in you and if that's something you want to do, you find you some mentors and you find mentors who have done it.
Yeah.
You know, you don't connect to somebody because they look good or you know, you like how they are. Some people who've been in the trenches, they've been in the fight. You know, I wasn't a great basketball player like you, but I did play, Doc.
Okay.
I rode the bench for real.
Okay. Yeah.
But one of the things when I first started, now my brother was a great basketball player.
Huh.
But you know, one of the things that the coach told me one time early, I was on JV. He said you can't dribble.
Okay.
So he would take and put you up against a wall, and you would just bounce, you know, bounce. And then so he said you got to run. You got to get your wind up. You got to run. You want to see any time, you know, on the court. And so what I'm saying is you got to have somebody to mentor you and help you develop your skills, you know, and you got to have somebody who know what they're doing.
Yeah, that's good advice. And what I also hear you saying is there needs to be some accountability in there.
Yes,
so,
man. Yeah, you got to have somebody, you know, they ain't gonna, because they like you or they love you.
Yeah.
Gonna be soft with you, you know.
Yeah.
And there's a time to be soft, but you got to have somebody gonna say, get up. Why you sleeping when you ought to be burning the midnight oil?
I know you're right. Yeah. You can't get lazy. You know, can't get lazy. Yeah.
You know, and when you know you've done this long enough to know, Michael, that sometimes you hit your head on the wall, and sometimes people hit your head.
Yeah.
So that's why you need a mentor where you can say, okay, here's what I'm going through, and here's what I'm experiencing, and here's what's happening. And so somebody who will shepherd you and teach you, somebody who will make you accountable, somebody who will share. See, some people don't like sharing what they know.
Right.
They'll hide it from you. They don't want you in their office. They don't want you to see the library. They don't want you to, but you got to have somebody who's willing to be open and say, here it is.
Yeah.
You know, because you can't live on an island by yourself.
Right. Yeah. Well, you were honored, was it last year in the Midwest?
Yes.
And tell us about that award, man, and congratulations, man. Well deserved. And tell us a little bit about that award that the Midwest was it preachers or Midwest lectureship?
Well, it's a lectureship with the board, you know, and I think Brother Dr. Flowers recommended me to be a living legend in terms of preaching here in the state of Ohio. I'm not the oldest preacher here, but I think I got the longest tenure here in the state. Some of my older brothers have gone on that I love and love dearly. They're still preaching, you know, but there's some who are honorable people like Clyde and Columbus. He's still alive, you know. We just lost Richard, who blessed my life, and I wasn't able to make it to his ceremonies, but there are people in this state who have been around a long time, but I was recommended by the committee there at the Midwest Lectureship, and man, it's such an honor, Dr. Cruz. So that's why I got to be appreciative, you know, because people don't have to honor you,
Yeah.
They don't have to honor you. I recognize people don't owe me anything.
Mm.
You know, that's not what I'm doing this for. But to be honored to me was wonderful, for
Yeah.
not just for me, um, uh, Dr. Crusoe, but for my wife.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you know, in a lot of ways, when you're in those storms, your wife with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
she experienced a lot of that anxiety and that stress, and some of the great things that's happened too. But she, you know, for my wife and for my daughter, who, you know, your children
Yeah.
see some of that stuff too. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and all for my family and for my church family.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, to you know to say he deserves. He's a good person. And
Well, you well deserved, and I'm so happy for you, and I'm thankful that you're in Ohio. You're up north, and I tease you from time to time. We would play Toledo Scott,
I know, man.
and we always beat them. You know, they number
That's
always beat them. So,
unfortunate.
you know,
That's unfortunate.
yeah. And
I
then I
think,
went to school with a guy from, I don't know if he was from Scott. I went to Wittenberg University.
okay.
His name was Robin Gregory. And
Okay,
he was a
I
great
heard that name
basketball
before.
player.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't remember which high school it was.
It had to be Scott or Libby.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And he was a few years behind me, though, but they produced some good players. But
Yeah,
25 years at Glass.
this year, man.
Yeah. So tell us, I only got a couple more questions. And one of them is, if someone's coming through on a Sunday and they show up at the Glass City Church of Christ, what can they expect in a worship service?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the first word. We're gonna worship. That's how the old folk used to say. We're gonna worship, Doc. And it's God-centered worship. You know, it's God-centered worship. We're gonna sing like we sing, and we're gonna pray. We're gonna remember the death and the burial and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. We're gonna give of our means, and they're gonna hear a word. So one of the things I've done at Glass City, because I wanted the word to be the last thing that they heard. So I'm the last one to get up, and I want that to be the last thing that they hear, the word of God.
Yeah.
You know, and and if you're a guest, we're certainly going to honor you as being a guest in our audience. You know, we're gonna honor you. You know, but the last thing I want the people to hear is this word, this message.
Yeah. Yeah.
About Jesus Christ, and Jesus will set you free.
Yeah.
And when he set you free, that you are added to the body of Christ. And if you're not a believer, you can be added to the body of Christ and become a child of God.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And so,
great.
but we're gonna we got our greeters, man, and
Yeah.
they're in the foyer and they're
Yeah.
at the door.
All right.
And
well, one thing I want to leave
if you're
on your
listening
mind.
and you ever in Toledo, come by the Glass City Church.
Yeah. We put in a plug now for Glass City. Okay. All right.
Yeah, come by the Glass City Church. I'll tell you, God's gonna bless your life.
All righty. That's good news. Well,
Yeah.
one thing I want to leave on your mind, we still need to write that book together on
Yeah,
trends
man.
in the church. Yeah. So
Yeah, man. I think
yeah.
And I'm not being racial with this, but I think we got a lot of African American preachers in the Church of Christ that have a lot of skills, and I think we need to get together and put some information out.
Yeah.
You know, we need to leave a legacy of writing. You know, because I think all of us have something to say.
Yeah. Well, one of the purposes of this podcast is even when we're gone, people can look back and look at this conversation between preachers. You know, the good thing that Dr. Flowers and others in the Midwest did was they honored you while you could still smell your flowers.
Yes, sir.
But we're going to be passing on off the scene, and it's kind of good as a remembrance for these kind of podcast books you know,
Man,
that
I
kind
thought
of thing to be
when you
written.
said podcast, I said, man, that's great.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm just trying to stay relevant with these young guys, but
Yeah, Doc.
we're gonna do what we can. Well, here's the last question, and
Yes,
and
sir.
and take your time on this one if you need to. You've been 25 years with Glass City, in Louisiana, and Enterprise, and then you're known in our brotherhood. What's in your opinion, what's the current state of the church? And you know, now we could be philosophical and
Right,
theoretical. We know Christ is the head,
right,
and
right.
we know the gates of hell will not prevail against the church. But this is on our watch, during our time. But we've seen things
Yeah,
prior to being on our watch.
yeah, yeah.
So, you know, and you don't have to pull any punches. You
No,
know,
no.
just you're down to earth for real guy. And what's the current state of the church now?
Well, I think that the church is in trouble because I don't think we don't have authentic, what I want to call authentic koinonia in terms of conversation, you know, in terms of coming together and saying, okay, here's where we are as a group of people. That's not indifferent to any religious organization, no matter what you want to call it, whether it's Methodist or a Southern Baptist. You know, we people, we have issues, but I think we're moving. You cannot win divided. We've got to come together and have some unity and understand the lines of demarcation. We got to do that. There has to be some unity and diversity. We got to come together, and we have to sit down and you know, and say we need to build our movement and have real, honest conversation. You know, and I think that's why I believe. You know, I think social media has its advantages and disadvantages, but I think again, what we need to do is, I'll give you an example, man. One of the things that early in my ministry that I really loved was the national lectureship, man. I would go. I don't care about preaching, man, but I would go because, you know, at the end of the day, you got all these people in here. It's our national thing for African American churches, and we would come together and hear great preaching and great workshops, and there was arguments and differences, but we put the people of God, the family of God, from leaders above all that. You know, above all that, we saw the value of being together.
Yeah.
And the value of saying, yeah, we got some Peters and some Pauls, and we got some Johns.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? We got some different kind of disciples that come out of different kind of places and spaces, but we came together. Coming together became more important than not coming together. You know, and being able to come together and just work out those things, man. Those people who had influence and those people who were in charge and all those, they made it where we can just come together. You know, and I ain't got, see, Mike, I don't have to have goosebumps about a person to come together.
Well, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
We are united in Christ. And so how we flush that out is one thing. But at the end of the day, we come together. We come together, you know. And, you know, you don't hang out with everybody.
Yeah, yeah.
But that don't mean you can't get along.
Right, right. Yeah.
You know, so we want to sit down and discuss some stuff and have some conversation. We do it in the spirit of Christ. So when you read the Gospels, and you know Jesus was the leader, but they had all kind of issues.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They had all kind of issues, man.
Yeah, yeah.
But Jesus was a leader, and so we got to be rooted in Christology, in our relationship with Christ, and allow that to guide us into unity. And again, we may see some things different, but we can come together and find a way to make it work, man. Just, you know, I miss I missed that. I
Yeah.
missed that kind. Man, it was not only teaching and worship, but it was fun.
Yeah. My wife and I, we talk about that, like, going to lectureship. I mean, that was like one of the highlights of our
Yes,
year.
other year, man.
My kids grew up wanting to go to lectureship.
Yes,
Even though they had youth rallies and youth conferences,
that's right.
going to lectureship, and sometime as they got older, my wife would tease, well, y'all kind of too old to be following us around. You go do your own
This
thing.
our time. This is our time, huh?
Yeah. Well, let's work on that, of the unity that we had and the fellowship that we had, and being able to discuss our differences.
Yeah,
and
in a healthy way, man.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, Dr. Birt, I've enjoyed you, man. Thank you for sharing these thoughts with us, and we'll stay in touch. And
God bless you, Mike.
Yeah. All righty.
And God bless your leadership and all the things that you're involved in, and teaching and working with the School of Religious Studies and all those kinds of things, man.
Man, I'm glad you mentioned that, because you're one of the instructors of the School of Religious Studies.
I'm doing a class now every other week. Yeah.
Okay. Well, tell us the class that you're teaching now, and then tell us about classes that you have taught. Yeah.
Well, for the most part, I teach. I'm teaching the class with women. I got about 4 women in my class. So we're just trying to walk through the Bible and give some clarification about women and the role of women and what the Bible says about women, and to encourage them to, walk in the structures that God has that open for them to walk in. So I'm excited about it, man. I've done some other stuff with them. I think we did some stuff out of I want to say the Gospel of John one time, where we were on campus and with a few other instructors. We did that out of the Gospel of John, and I had a great time doing that, man. And so anywhere, Dr. Crusoe, I can use my gift, and any way God opens the door for me to use my gift, that's what I'm going to do.
Well, thank you, sir. And we're going to put up the information for the School of Religious Studies.
Yeah.
And thank you again, and God bless you, man. Appreciate you. Love you, man. Take care.
Love you too, man. And thank you for inviting me, brother.
No problem. All right. I'm going to put up the address for the School of Religious Studies, and I almost forgot to ask him about that. I'm glad he mentioned that. Dr. Birt is one of the instructors. Lloyd Harris is the president, and we want people to know about the School of Religious Studies and the advantages of that.